Let us bring into this conversation Steve Chaggaris, political director of CBS News, and Mark Leibovich. Steve is, of course, as I just said, our political director. Mark is a CBS News political contributor and chief national correspondent for the New York Times Magazine. I love to call you Lebo. Can I just call you?
You can call me whatever you want. I want to apologize, first of all, for my casual dress.
I love it.
Right?
I love it.
Okay.
Next time I'm sitting in this chair, I'm going full Lebo. I'm just saying it to you
I
now.
feel like I'm overdressed.
You know?
This is great.
Next time you guys will underdress to match.
Okay,
this isn't a formal event.
Exactly. So we have what I think can be fairly described as an elaborate and yet unstructured wish list from the Trump White House. House of Representatives, do something next week so I'm not monumentally embarrassed around my 100-day anniversary. Now, I think all three of us would agree the 100-day anniversary is kind of a false narrative. It's sort of a media-generated milestone, but it's a milestone nonetheless. And administrations feel pressure to have something to talk about. They want to talk about health care. Is there any chance of them getting that across the finish line in the House?
Here is what is interesting to me. I mean, you have accomplished legislatively effectively nothing. Okay, and it seems like the president and the White House are continuing to swing for the fences. They want a big, comprehensive repeal and replace bill that, from what I can tell, is nowhere right now. And they're saying, get it done next week. Now, forgetting the fact that the Congress is not even in session right now, I mean, we're looking at a shutout. I mean, the way you end a no-hitter is not by swinging for the fences. You try to bunt a little bit. I mean, I don't want to extend the baseball analogy too much, but I mean, essentially, this is like a big, big heave, and they have nothing to show legislatively for anything they've done over the first 100 days.
Now, the administration would argue, hey, the Congressional Review Act did take care of a lot of last-minute Obama regulations. That's a power that other presidents haven't used. We've used it. The long-term benefits of that will be seen, but to your point,
right.
that does not fall into the category of big deal accomplishments, and it doesn't fall into the category of things promised early on. Remember, we had the day one act about repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act, and we're going to get right to that, and it's going to happen. And good and great are really rhetorical placeholders. There's nothing there. Well, is there any chance this thing materializes next week?
I don't see it, how it happens. So think about it. The schedule in terms of Congress, you mentioned, they're not even in now. They're not back until Tuesday night. The White House is suggesting, let's get this going on Wednesday. Okay, well, let's keep in mind that the funding for the government runs out at the end of next week. That is the priority for the House and Senate next week, is to make sure that the government is still open. There's going to be discussion about government shutdown. There are plenty of issues they have to deal with just to get through that problem. I'm not sure that the idea of pushing Obamacare repeal through with a bill that hasn't been vetted by the Republicans, where it hasn't been whipped in terms of they have no idea how many people would even support this thing. You have people on the outskirts saying, okay, there might be some agreement here, but no one really knows what Republicans in general think about this in the House. You think that they're going to rush this thing through when they actually have real business to take care of to prevent the government to shut down? I think it's going to be tough.
And no president, and especially not this one, and the president alluded to this today at the press conference with the Italian prime minister, we're not going to shut the government down. The government's going to stay open. Well, that means he's going to have to compromise with Democrats because unlike all the conversation we heard about health care, well, we can do that with just 51 votes in the Senate. You cannot do that on a continuing resolution or anything that keeps the government open. You're going to have Democratic buy-in. And that Democratic buy-in, it seems to me, is going to come at a price.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's talk today. I mean, again, who knows what they will actually give, but that this is going to be tied to a border wall. Okay, it looks like I can't think of a lot of Democrats who are going to sign on to that to begin with. He also has built no goodwill with Democrats. I mean, when on one day you're tweeting about the Democratic Party, all the accomplishment, whatever he tweeted the other day, criticizing John Lewis, whatever he has done. I mean, does not build a working relationship. I think it's at a certain point, either you have a short-term extension to maybe buy yourself a little time, or just do the bare minimum to keep the government open, because at this point, you're kind of starting from zero and you don't want to go below zero.
Right, and to the point, the reason that you have to bring Democrats on board is to get this to the Senate, you'll need to cross 60 votes, because if they can filibuster it and say, we're not trying to shut the government down, we're just trying to protect basic priorities for the American people, and they believe that will be a defensible argument, most Democrats do. Right. We don't know, it's untested, but that's what they believe, and that's how they're going to vote initially. And that's going to be the pressure point on the president. Do you want to have a shutdown on your nearly 100th day in office?
That's right. And if you don't think that Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is smelling blood here, they're seeing the deadline, they're seeing the 100 days coming around. You think, right, a shutdown on the 100th day, which really it would be the 99th day of this guy's administration. You think that the Trump administration is trying to do whatever they can to prevent that? Absolutely. So that means probably some deals to be made with Senate Democrats, and I think Chuck Schumer is smelling blood right now.
And I'm going to guess, because I've been through this kind of scenario at least once or twice before, that whenever this deal is cut, we'll hear phrases like, well, there was a down payment made on the border wall. Correct. There was something that's a step in the right direction. It's not all we wanted, but you never get everything you want in Washington, but it's something we can live with, right, and I can deal with it.
Right. You can sort of see how the sort of preemptive spin is going. I mean, the fact is, this is to his both credit and discredit. Donald Trump gives you a lot to work with. Juxtaposing soundbite-wise. How many chant and responses during the campaign? Who's going to pay for this? Mexico. And so then you have this thing in which there's a, coming out of the U.S. Treasury that might shut down the government. It doesn't take too much sort of, point A to point B to sort of see, who's breaking a promise.
Right. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that will be, whatever the outcome, in very sharp relief.
Every Democrat will talk
We're
about
not
it.
talking about Mexico putting a penny on the table. Right. This is about the U.S. Congress and its willingness or unwillingness to put money on the table for a border wall.
Right.
And that in itself places in very sharp relief what candidate Trump serenaded the country and his supporters about time and time again. Steve, do you think that just by itself, whatever else goes on, is a problem?
Absolutely. And they were sort of, we're sort of prepped for this, right? We did early on in this administration, we were hearing, okay, well, the government up front is going to have to pay for this, but eventually Mexico is going to pay for the wall. Well, you know what? That's not even part of the debate now. The debate now is, how are we going to get Congress to pay the upfront part of this? And no one's, as you said, is talking about the Mexico side of this. So eventually, what it comes down to for Trump supporters is, okay, so wait, when is Mexico going to pay for this? Because you're trying to prevent the government from shutting down, and we're talking about the U.S. government paying for this. That is the ultimate deadline right now, immediately.
Or in the broader sense, when is he going to start delivering? The three of us were at a lot of campaign rallies. There were three chants that always resonated. One, lock her up. Two, build a wall.
Up on that a while ago.
Three, what was the other one? Day one, I'm going to repeal Obamacare. You got to get something here.
What do we make of this kind of significant announcement this week from Jason Chaffetz, a guy who had a promising career, very visible in Congress, not the most influential House Republican, but within the top 25, I think you could fairly argue. He up and says on one day, I'm not running for re-election, and the next day he says, I could resign any time now. Does this smell strange to you?
Well, I think a lot of people want to see something sinister in it, and there might be something there. This is a guy who has been charged as the Oversight Committee chairman to investigate the Trump administration, and maybe there's some discomfort there. We don't know for sure. I've talked to people on the Hill, especially Republicans, who aren't hearing any real rumors about sinister stuff, so we can read into that. I think the reality is this is a guy who definitely has his eye on the governorship of Utah, which is up in 2020. It's probably a little bit easier to run for governor when you're not running for re-election, perhaps in a tougher race than he might have dealt with in 2018 if he was running for re-election to that. So he can leave Congress, make some money in the private sector, focus solely on the 2020 race. I think if you're just looking at it from a purely non-conspiratorial view, that probably is what's going on. A lot of people do want to try to figure out if there's anything sinister going on here, but we don't really know.
Right. The other thing is it makes sense for him politically to get out early before you sort of accrue too much damage over the first term if you want to run for governor, right? The other thing we know about Jason Chaffetz is that he's a little mercurial. During the campaign, he said one day, I cannot look my daughters in the eye and ever support this guy. He did change his mind. He did support Trump. He's been a little all over the map. He's in a very important job, although one that can easily be cowed by a president of the same party. Hasn't done a lot. And so, maybe he sort of doesn't see this getting any better and maybe wants to cut his losses.
And he also had some pretty tough town halls. And he might be saying to himself, my town halls are not going to get any easier.
Or more fun.
And that's the thing. And so wait, what if somebody decides to run against him in a primary? That's a lot of money and energy to just save your nomination for House again. And then perhaps a Democrat will run against him in the general election. That's a lot to go through if you're looking at the governorship in 2020. Cut your losses, take a step back, focus on the bigger prize later. That might be what he's doing.
Before I let you fine gentlemen go, a little bit of an interesting conversation this week has sprouted about WikiLeaks and a possible CIA traitor. That's a heavyweight word, but it's been thrown around. It's not being casually used. Working in a conspiratorial fashion with WikiLeaks. What do we? This is the simplest, crudest. I apologize for this question.
No
what do we make
apologies.
of that, Lebo?
Here's what we make of it. I mean, again, you go to the juxtaposition. I mean, what people will notice, what
So
people
unforgivable.
will. No, I forgive. What people will latch onto, and again, you go back to the campaign rallies just because there's such good video.
I love
around them.
WikiLeaks.
I love WikiLeaks. How many of those were there? Again, you juxtapose it with,
And the CIA director is now
we
calling
could spend
it
the rest of
a
the of this
counterintelligence
program
agency.
talking about
We could.
what Donald Trump has tweeted and what he's doing.
But I mean,
It
the
is
first
not-
public comments from the CIA director, Mike Pompeo, he said WikiLeaks has to be called out. It is a counterintelligence operation.
Well,
And
big-
Pompeo is one who also was defending WikiLeaks last year.
Yeah,
too.
no, I mean, look, this is not, I mean, yes, you can say it's just video. I mean, it's substance. I mean, this is like, if people want to know where these people stand, where this administration stands, whether they're going to deliver for people who put a great deal of stake, whether it's literally or spiritually or whatever, into this campaign, they're going to want to know, like, when is this going to happen?
And I guess the underlying threshold question is, government secrets released, always terrible, always good, or sometimes in between?
The calculus here is, it seems to be whatever is good for Trump, he's for. I mean, that's sort of what you sort of look for, and I don't mean to be diminishing. I mean, it's sort of how he runs his life.
Do you have a philosophical answer to that question?
We know what was
About
the question again?
government secrets.
Oh, do I have a philosophical? Speaking as a journalist, I'm a big proponent of transparency and openness, but I also believe that obviously, sensitive information is sensitive and classified for a reason, and as an American, we have to be mindful of that.
Steve?
I
Any last
agree.
thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I think that you hit the nail on the head. As a journalist, you want as much information as possible, but some things, maybe we shouldn't know.
Yeah, and there's a history of working together. I mean, ideally, obviously, there's going to be a give and take, but you can. It's not an either or thing.
Mark Leibovich of
Yeah.
the New York Times Magazine. Thank you very
Call
much,
me
Lebo.
Lebo, yeah.
It's always great to see you. Steve Chaggaris, political director of CBS News. Thanks for joining us. We will see you a little later on in the hour.
Can't wait.
I'm so glad we'll be seeing you a little bit later on in the hour.